welcome to the Burr Broadcast, where we provide you important legal updates on the latest labor and employment news. My name is Roni Payne, and I'm an associate in Burr & Forman's Greenville, South Carolina office. Today, we're going to discuss the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's proposed heat illness prevention standards. OSHA released its proposed rules on heat injury and illness prevention in both outdoor and indoor work settings just a little over a week ago on July 2nd, 2024. According to the Department of Labor, heat is the leading cause of weather-related deaths in the United States. The department estimates that finalizing this proposed rule would protect approximately 36 million workers, significantly reducing heat-related injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. This regulation would establish the first federal standard mandating employers to develop a plan for evaluating and mitigating heat hazards in their workplace. Let's start by discussing who the proposed rule applies to. The proposed standard would apply to all employers conducting outdoor and indoor work in all general industry, construction, maritime, and agricultural sectors where OSHA has jurisdiction. However, OSHA is proposing to exclude the following from the rule: work activities for which there is no reasonable expectation of heat exposure, short duration employee exposures to heat, which means 15 minutes or less in a 60-minute period, emergency response activities, work at indoor sites kept below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, telework, and indoor sedentary work activities. So what does the proposed rule require? The proposed standard would require employers to develop and implement a heat injury and illness prevention plan with site-specific information to evaluate and control heat hazards in the workplace. The rule requires each employer's heat injury and illness prevention plan to include a comprehensive list of the work activities covered by the plan and all necessary policies and procedures to comply with the standard. If an employer has more than 10 employees, the plan would be required to be in writing. Employers will be required to designate one or more heat safety coordinators that are responsible for implementing and monitoring the plan. These heat safety coordinators must be specifically identified in any written heat injury and illness prevention plan. The standard also requires employers to identify heat hazards in outdoor and indoor work sites. For outside work sites, employers would be required to monitor heat conditions by tracking local heat index forecasts or measuring heat index or wet bulb globe temperature. For inside work sites, employers would be required to identify work areas with the potential for hazardous heat exposure, develop and implement a monitoring plan, and seek employee input. Additionally, employers will be required to implement certain control measures when heat conditions meet or exceed two specified triggers. The first trigger is referred to as the initial heat trigger and occurs at a heat index of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. At a heat index of 80 degrees or higher, employers would be required to provide employees cool drinking water, break areas with cooling measures, indoor work area controls, protocols for acclimating new and returning employees who are not yet acclimatized, as well as paid rest breaks, if necessary, to prevent overheating. The second trigger, or the high heat trigger, occurs at a heat index of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. At a heat index of 90 degrees or higher, employers would be required to provide employees mandatory rest breaks of 15 minutes at least every 2 hours, and this can include unpaid break meals, as well as observation for signs and symptoms of heat-related illness and a hazard alert to remind employees of key parts of the heat and injury and illness prevention plan. The proposed standard also requires employers to develop and implement a heat emergency response plan that includes procedures for responding to signs and symptoms of heat-related illnesses and ensuring that emergency medical services are available. Employers will be required to provide supervisors, heat safety coordinators, and employees initial and annual refresher training on heat stress hazards, signs and symptoms of heat-related illnesses, emergency response procedures, and the contents of heat injury and illness prevention plans. Supplemental training is required whenever changes occur that affect employees' exposure to heat, policies and procedures are updated, or a heat injury or illness occurs. OSHA's proposed rule has been submitted to the Office of the Federal Register for publication and is currently pending publication in the Federal Register. Once the proposal is officially published in the Federal Register, there will be a 120-day public comment period. If you have any questions regarding these topics, please don't hesitate to reach out to Burr & Forman's Labor and Employment Group. Our team is always prepared to help you navigate these issues. Visit us today at www.burr.com.